The views, comments, and opinions of the following program do not necessarily reflect those of Morris Media Studios, MorrisMediaLive.com, or its affiliates. Listener discretion is advised.
Good day. Sawubona. Good afternoon, good evening. From wherever you are joining us, this is Faith Without Borders, and I'm your host, Pastor Calvin Sauls. It is a joy for you to join us today, and we're very excited about our topic today, which is celebrating International Women's Day. We will be having some dynamic, brilliant women on the show today to bring some perspective around issues affecting women both in the United States, especially black women in the United States, and then also in South Africa. I have my dear sister and fellow that's part of the Atlantic Fellowship for Racial Equity, Dora Maremma. She's going to also join us from South Africa. So it's going to be an exciting time for us as we share in this opportunity. As you know, here at Faith Without Borders, our mission is to engage in the education and mobilization of multiracial and multi-religious transnational movements for social equity and planetary justice glocally. And so we're looking forward to always grow into and live into that vision as we share in all of these opportunities together. We're going to start off today with something that's very, very special as we're celebrating International Women's Day, and that is to celebrate a woman that is near and dear to my heart. That is my mother, Annie Sauls. On Friday, March the 6th, we celebrated the first year anniversary of her transition to go and be with our ancestors in glory. And it was a bittersweet day for me and, of course, for all of my siblings and her grandchildren and great-grandchildren, all in South Africa. And so I just wanted to share just some thoughts about her as we kick off this time together, just to appreciate her for who she is, and to see how it is that we can continue to just lift her up as she continues, to live in and through us. So I'm glad to join all of my sisters and my brothers, all of her children, grandchildren, and also everyone that she has been a mother to, as we praise her for her loving mothering. It is with gratitude that we celebrate her and join in, this remembrance of her. We just want to say, Mom, because of your life and testimony, we can be assured of your presence with your Creator and your Redeemer. Thanks, Mother Ancestor, for watching over and walking with us. And I know for me, still providing assistance and guidance. So as you continue your eternal rest, may the best of your personhood and power rise in all of us, work through us until we achieve a more just and fair South Africa and United States. Hamegahle, Mother, and so glad that you continue to be with us in spirit here. So you'll see some images of her with some of her children, some of her grandchildren, the day that we celebrate her life. I know folk talk about, streets of gold in heaven, but you can see she's probably going to be on a red carpet over there doing her thing. And so we just appreciate her and celebrate her for who she is and how she's just been such a rock for us as children, and how she's just been such a rock for us as for her grandchildren and her great-grandchildren. She was like the mother hen, always gathering us together, bringing us together to make sure that we're all taken care of. So we miss your physical presence, but we know that your spiritual presence will forever be with us. Thank you so much. So on this International Women's Day, it is a joy for me to lift up my mother and give God thanks and praise for her. Thank you, Annie Sauls. The Lord bless and keep you. It is a joy. We're going to stay in South Africa with our first guest, that is Dora Maremma, who is the president of Gender CC, Women for Climate Justice Network in South Africa. Dora and I have the privilege of being Atlantic Fellows for Racial Equity. A very, very exciting and powerful transnational experience that we are having, and I'm so glad that I was able to meet Dora through this fellowship. I call her my fellow sister, and also I told her that she has the name of my only sister that I have, whose name is also Dora. So it's good, Dora, that there's some connection between us. I want to thank Dora for joining us. She's going to join us via Skype. And she has had a long day already. I know for a fact that she was at church this morning because she is a woman of faith. And then she drove several hours to Venda, where they are gathering for a powerful International Women's Day event. It's going to take place tomorrow. So, and then the final thing I want to say is it's midnight right now, or after midnight in South Africa. So, Dora, thank you for staying up to join us, allowing us to, make this experience transnational with your perspective around, all of the issues affecting women, but also to celebrate the courage and the resiliency of, women in South Africa. So, Dora, are you there? Good evening, good afternoon, good morning.
Good morning, Pastor Calvin. Thank you so much.
All right, there she is. I think you're real close to the camera there, but there we are. We can see you now. Thank you so much for joining us. I know you ready to go to bed, so we won't keep you long. But it is so important to hear your voice, to have your voice, because of all of the the courage that women has exhibited in South Africa, and the work that you are doing. So why don't we start off, Dora, by you just telling us a little bit about the organization that you are part of, the work that you are doing around, climate justice, and then we'll get into some of the other, issues that our sisters are facing in South Africa. But tell us a little bit about, who you are and the organization that you are part of.
Thank you so much for this great opportunity. As you have introduced me, my name is Dora Maremma. I am the current president of the board of Gender CC, Women for Climate Justice Network internationally. I also have founded the organization with the same name in South Africa since 2010. And the organization really focuses on working on issues of gender and climate change, both from local to international levels. The work that we do in South Africa focuses a lot on working with grassroots communities to ensure that climate change programs and policies are not silent on gender issues. And we take what I call a pro-women approach. So we are biased towards women because South Africa is a very unequal society, and not only economically, but also in terms of gender. Women still have a long way to be in the same position as men in this country, and to come into a community to work with them to find solutions for climate change without looking at the gender inequality, for me, it will sound like, a plan that is really very suicidal, because we could be, promoting solutions that are exacerbating the inequality that already exists. So we are pro-women in South Africa in terms of our work. So meaning we focus a lot on women, not necessarily to work exclusively with them, but to work with them in such a way that they could realize their own potential, their own power, and that they could be able to function in communities where they are and be integrated back into, those communities where they could not compete, but, work in partnership with men in a way that honors them as women, and not, where they just have to conform to the status quo.
Right. We know that certainly women has contributed tremendously to the freedom liberation of South Africa. The one of the huge marches in South Africa that took place is the Women's March, and one of the slogans that came out of that march is, "When you strike a woman, you struck a rock." And so we know that women has contributed tremendously around nation building, and so we'll get in a minute to South Africa's very progressive, constitution, and how does that, connect with, implementing it towards, gender equality. So we'll get to that in a minute. But Dorah, can you maybe share a little bit just about the courage, the resiliency, and the fortitude of women, in South Africa, both those who've gone before us, but also women like yourself, who are at the forefront of, doing a lot of intersectional work, and in your case, climate and gender, et cetera, et cetera. Let's just maybe reflect a little bit about, and just celebrate the courage, the resiliency, the fortitude of women. Any thoughts about that?
Definitely. And I think I would like to honor the women that I'm with now, the women that have driven with me for 8 hours from Johannesburg to almost, near the border of South Africa and and Zimbabwe. I'm just going to turn my camera. I've got a woman here, Matsepiso Makhamani. She's sitting next to me. They haven't slept. And I've got another one multitasking, working on a computer as we are talking. And I've got another one on the other room.
Oh, my goodness.
This shows you the resiliency of women. We just spent hours waiting for this call, talking about the different roles that we all play and the struggles that we have almost inherited from the past generation of women, and talking about the responsibility that this generation has got to be able to really find solutions for many of the challenges that we have faced, but also actually have almost co-opted, being co-opted into by those who came before us. I think the women are so today I posted something on Facebook and on my WhatsApp and also on Twitter saying, I celebrate the women on whose shoulders I climb. I climb on the shoulders of many giants in this country and many other countries. The women who are faceless, that don't seek the limelight, they don't seek the recognition. Those are the engines of the families. They are the heartbeat of the communities. They are the soul of this nation. Their contribution to the emancipation of South Africa, of Black people in this country, cannot be measured. I think there is an attempt to actually look at that and quantify the contribution that has been made, but I don't think you can, because for many men and young men during apartheid to be able to go to exile, and young women as well to go and take up arms and fight that apartheid apartheid government, there were many women that were left at home, looking after the homes, looking after the elderly, holding the fabric of the family. That allowed many of these men that today has been the heroes of the struggle to be able to do what they were doing. So, and I think, that for me is very important, because it's not something that is always, it's not something that is mostly talked about. We talk about those ones who were able to go to Lusaka, who were able to go to Lesotho, to go to other countries, to be able to partner with others to find solutions to end apartheid. But we don't talk about the ones that kept the fires burning in this country.
Right.
The ones that continue to be in the forefront. They are I call them the defenders of human rights. The front line. They are in the front line. They are really in the cold face of poverty, inequality, domestic violence, abuse. They are the ones that shield the crippled, the old people, the children who cannot defend themselves.
Yeah.
And I think for me, that is something that even me, having to sit here to have this conversation with you, I owe it to my.
Okay, we may have
up until this day, who sacrificed so much for me to be able to be where I am today.
Great. Yeah, we just had a technical challenge there, Dora. Thanks so much. Certainly, the contribution is vast, and it is extraordinary, in terms of what women, has done. Let's talk a little bit about Dora. As I mentioned earlier on, we have this, a progressive constitution, yet there's still a huge gap in terms of, gender equality in South Africa, the huge challenge that we are dealing, around what women are facing, what girls are facing, in South Africa. Would you lift up just some of those, challenges right now that creates, this gap that continues, in South Africa? Because one thing we have to realize is that, apartheid, as a manifestation of white, supremacist policies, white supremacy is very, very sexist, and so certainly women had to carry several, extra burdens, during the apartheid years, and carrying those burdens continue now even in post-apartheid South Africa. So can you just give us an assessment of what is this gap between one of the most progressive constitutions in the world, yet we are still dealing with, a society that continues to be, unequal, especially, in the case of gender inequality.
As you have highlighted, we've got one of the most progressive constitutions. I think it is an ideal that, it is an ideal, and I think people are treating it as an ideal. There is a huge disconnect between the constitution and this ideal state that we want to live up to and what is happening on the ground. And I think what is lacking is we are lacking bold leadership. We are lacking a political will. We are lacking leadership that can envision that can envision the future. Meaning that can envision this constitution that speaks so much about, women rights, human rights, and all of these things. And I think the challenge comes when, because of what you just said, that apartheid government was sexist and they had all these, all these ills that almost were entrenched in the psyche of human beings. Human beings, both black and white, and obviously, many men and young men, they grow up to emulate that. It's about power. It's about access, and and almost cannot separate, cannot divide, cannot move away from that, because for them, when you can be able to live like this and treat those who can't do anything for you in this manner, then it means you have arrived, right? So what we need is the radical, a radical change, a radical transformation, a way of thinking about this equality, away from apartheid. So we cannot look at apartheid and say, okay, let's look at what was happening there and how can we make it better. We need something new, because that stuff didn't work for us, and it doesn't work even now. So let's stop taking that dysfunctional thing and saying maybe we can remove parts of this that we believe doesn't work, and maybe this thing can function. It can't function, because it was not designed. It was not designed to function. It was not designed to recognize those who were considered the lowest citizens, those who've been perceived. So it was not designed to favor women. It was not designed to favor young women. As a result, you can try and doctor it here and there and fix it here and there and add a few things to it, but at the core of it, it actually is not going to be. So we need a bold leadership. We need political will. We need people in the government or ministers that can really dream about this place where men and women will be equal, will be valued, and actually go on and build that and co-create it with the women at the center, at the core, not at the periphery. Because that would be sitting in parliament, coming up with laws and programs and projects and whatever the policymakers. The same way on the table, there'll be old women who are supposed to be representing the women, And I think the best way is to actually take this to bring the voice of the very women that you want to create these policies and these programs for, and actually ask them. What would you like? What would you like? Right. How would you want to see things happening? What would make you safe in various spaces? What kind of spaces would you like to be created, and what would be the design? Because it's a complete different animal to the animal that existed before.
Right. Yeah. And you're right in terms of just making sure that we have the voice, of women at the table, and they are consulted, around that. Dora, I want to ask you if you can back up a little bit from your laptop so we can actually see your face. That'll be helpful, for us. I want to zoom in on I know a challenge that is very, very prevalent right now. We've talked about it, and I've been in conversation with a lot of people. And that is, the challenge, around gender-based violence. We know that, South Africa is, labeled, as the rape capital of the world, and we got to be real about that, in terms of what's happening, with women and how sex is being used as a way to exert power, as a way to facilitate exploitation. As a way to dehumanize. Can you just give us a sense about, and I know, the president of South Africa, introduced some legislation around, some, sentences for those who would engage in that, and I don't even know whether that has worked its way through Parliament or not. But it's one thing to have legislation; it's another thing to facilitate implementation, right? Of whatever legislation that's been passed. So, can you just tell us a little bit about the state of this particular challenge in South Africa, and what is being done, both on all levels, grassroots, and what's being done, by the faith community, if you will, what's being done by government around dealing, just with this unacceptable and just abhorrent, challenge called gender-based violence.
I mean, the funny thing is that we were just having a conversation right now with this ladies I'm with right now, and looking at, what is the social construct? What is this thing that perpetuates this this violence against women?
Mm-hmm.
And I think, I mean, it's very complex. But what I can say is that a lot of solutions that are being put forward are focusing on the women. Mm-hmm. The women gotta act like this. The women have to speak. The women have to report. The women gotta do this and do that and do that. And I feel that there isn't a lot that is being done to actually engage men. Mm-hmm. Those who mm-hmm. are the ones who are perpetrating this. Those who are, the ones. I think the issue of making longer sentences, harsher sentences, and all of these things, and having a register of offenders, of sex offenders, and doing this, I don't know. I have no idea that it actually works. I and I don't want to throw the baby with the bathwater here, but I just I'm very skeptical.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And I think there has to be, and I don't know if there's any single solution. Mm-hmm. I just know that we have to be tackling this issue from all ends. And I think education and awareness is a huge part of it. Mm-hmm. Also, challenging stereotypes and culture, unfortunately, is a part of it as well. Because we just had a conversation about this right now, that there is even, women, older women are being co-opted to actually cover up some of these things when they show up.
Yeah.
Why is that? Mm-hmm. Why is that? When is this thing going to be nipped in the bud? Right? And I think also education is a big part. Mm-hmm. A lot of it also happens in the home. It happens at home. Yeah. How are we raising our children, both boys and girls? How are we raising them? Right. As parents, to make even at the church. Funny enough, we're talking about the church as an institution that has been co-opted not only to perpetuate apartheid in this country, but also violence against women by always reducing women to, I don't know what I can say. They are just victims of this, and please don't leave your husband, or don't leave your man. Please don't talk about this in the open. This is a family matter. We're just talking about it right now because one of our sisters was telling us that she actually had decided to leave the church because she just felt so disempowered that every time when she went to report the matter at the church, the pastors will say, yes, we hear you. Maybe let's think about this, pray, and let's think about maybe your husband has been bewitched and do this, and let's see what we can do. But it's never about the man. Yeah. It's really never about the man taking responsibility.
Yeah.
It's always about the women do this, try this. Also the police will say, oh, report and do this. But when is the man going to be the center? Yeah. I believe that there must be some really a lot of programs focusing on men.
Yes.
On men, even older men who are, because the younger men are looking at the older men. Mm-hmm. And this thing continues, as you say, even post-apartheid.
Yes.
Because that's the thing that is in fashion. That is fashionable. Yeah. When you are successful, you should be sitting, smoking a cigar, driving a BMW with women around you.
Yeah.
That's a sign of success. That is still being practiced and shown on mainstream media as the sign that shows that you have arrived.
Yeah. Yeah.
And when are we going to challenge these stereotypes?
Yeah.
Instead of just dealing with the symptoms of the problem.
Yes. Yeah. Well,
there is a deeper problem that we need to address.
Yes.
And some of it, this is not there's no common enemy, as you say, unlike when we're dealing with apartheid or white supremacy, whatever. It's across race, it's across class.
Yeah.
It's tough.
Yeah.
And I think we really have to rethink the strategies that we have put forward to do this. Otherwise, it's going to run away like a wildfire.
Yes. Yeah, and I mean, certainly we want to, say that the focus has to be men. And again, as a man who is who stand in solidarity, with women. I think it's essential that we as men also take the lead in this, to see, how we look at what these root causes are and how we respond to it, intentionally, strategically, and effectively. Otherwise, we just, continue to be part of the program. I've been part of the problem.
Yeah.
And
it has to be men that calls out other men.
Yes.
When this thing, it has to be men that teach the young boys.
Yeah. And then also,
it has to be coming from them.
Yes. And also, we would want to say that the silence from the faith community in general, but particularly the church, is appalling. Certainly, God is not silent, when, women are abused. God is not silent when, these type of heinous acts, take place. And so I think it is important for us to see how we can bring voice, to this. When I was in South Africa recently, for our fellowship gathering, I had the opportunity to preach and to speak. To preach at a church, in one of the townships south of Johannesburg called Ennerdale, and it was their Men's Emphasis Sunday, and my sermon title was "Being on Purpose." And during that time, I basically shared that the purpose of men is not to abuse women or exploit women. You do not, define your humanity based on your masculinity, but instead, how can you allow your divinity that resides within you inform your humanity and see how that can provide you with some insight about, your masculinity. If we're going to just reduce one another's humanity down to our femininity, our masculinity, then we are on a slippery slope that will compromise the divinity that resides in all of us around that. And then, was at the Ennerdale High School where I did the assembly, and basically, I used that scripture from Jeremiah 29:11, that says, this I declare, says the Lord, that I know the plans that I have for you, plans not to bring you harm, but plans to give you a future and a future of hope. And I said that scripture applies to girls and women as well, that harm ought not to come to them, but instead hope needs to come to them. And so how do we align ourselves with God's plan of hope and God's plan of facilitating good success, for everybody, including women, around that. And so as I was speaking to, 1,500 high schoolers, basically, the purpose was to relay this message that that gender-based violence is not of God. It is an abomination, and God is not on the side of anybody that engages, in gender-based violence. So you're absolutely right, that it has to start with us as men, and there are many men, like myself, who stand in solidarity with women to see how we can speak to men about this as we continue, to do the work that we have to do towards a more just and fair society. Dora, I know it's late there and you guys have a conference. Tell us a little bit about the conference that's taking place tomorrow, and then we're going to, let you and those powerful women that you're with go ahead and take a nap, because I know y'all have a big day with the event coming up. Tell us a little bit about the event that's going to take place, over there on Monday.
The event that is taking place is a dialogue. So we've got a multi-stakeholder dialogue that we are hosting together with the communities of the Greater Venda District here in Venda, in Limpopo, and it also in partnership with the government offenders who are supporting the program. And we're having men and women from various institutions, including the provincial government, coming along. And the women, and to focus on the issues faced by smallholder farmers in this region in the face of a changing climate.
Wow.
And then work together to find possible solutions. Yeah, that's what we are doing. So we're focusing on women smallholder farmers.
All right. Well, listen, we're sending solidarity and support to you guys, and prayers and partnership with you. Before you go, I want to bring in, my next guest who's with me here in Los Angeles, a dear friend and colleague that I have the pleasure of working with in the community, Dallas Fowler, who is a political consultant and commentator, and she's been listening, very, very, close to what you were saying, and I cannot let this moment go by with this just by giving her an opportunity to maybe just share a few words, Dorah, to you, with you, because the next couple of minutes we're going to be talking about what's happening with Black women in the United States in general, but in particular right here in Los Angeles. So I want to just invite Dallas to just share some thoughts that she has, with Dorah, and then we kind of, bridge, South Los Angeles and South Africa, right here, as we celebrate International Women's Day. Dallas?
Greetings, ladies. Peace and love from California, from Los Angeles, California. I've been a women's commissioner here in Los Angeles, working on issues impacting women and girls in our city, issues like human trafficking, that being one of the top issues, but our education and how we make our money and to how we get transportation to and from and move about our cities. And hearing from you and getting to hear some of the things that you're working on is so much inspiring for me, just to know that we are, as women across this country, around this world, from the U.S. to the motherland, really working to prepare a future for our young girls. And that means everything. And just knowing that the things that you are experiencing, and women in terms of our faith and in terms of how we access opportunities to create sustainable communities for ourselves is the most important work that we could be doing. And so to hear that there's a group of women in a room preparing for those discussions for us and being able to stand up for ourselves means everything. And thank you, Pastor Sauls, for having us and giving us this platform to be able to share and hopefully inspire other women in terms of around the world who may happen to stumble upon this blog, happen to stumble upon this interview, and get to share some of the things that and share and revel in that we're not alone. We have our own issues with domestic violence here in this country, and with sexual assault on our college campuses to the boardroom and to the offices. And we have to make sure that we are standing in solidarity with one another around this world. And so just thank you. I don't want to take up too much of your time. I know it's late there, but I really appreciate everything that you shared, and it was a blessing, and I hope to be able to connect with you and keep seeing what you all are doing and see if we can support in the future.
All right. And Dorah,
thank you.
So Dallas is coming to South Africa at some point.
I hope to get there by the end of this year. I'm actually doing my motherland trip.
Cool.
I'm doing my return, but I'm going to Senegal in May to check out the new Museum of the Diaspora there, which I cannot wait to have that experience. Yeah. And so we're going to do that, but I hope to be in South Africa by the end of this year.
So just to let you know, we're working with Black Women for Wellness. Putting together an experience, an encounter, for Black women from here. And Dorah, you'll hear from us so that we can make sure that we connect with you and the women there and several other women around, just bridging, transnationally around all of the issues, that women are facing, but also the solutions that women have for these challenges around that. So I know y'all will probably meet in person at some point.
We will, and we're going to meet on social media or some network I will join so I can be connected with you, because there are other things. You know, I'm also been a part of the Los Angeles African American Women's Public Policy Institute, which one of the founders, Barbara Perkins, she has the International Black Women's Public Policy Institute.
Yes.
So I think that's a really good space for you all to be able to connect and patch in with women from around the world that are working on policy issues.
All right. Hey, we're doing it. Dorah, I don't know.
Thank you so much. It's all exciting.
Yes. Dorah, before you go, quickly, I want to ask Laurent to just put on an image for us, because the World Council of Churches, is really inviting us, to really, as people of faith, take a stand. The World Council of Churches urges churches to join Thursdays in Black towards a world without rape and violence. Gender justice, the council says, must be the agenda of men as well as women, said the General Secretary of the World Council of Churches, in a comment that he released as part of, celebrating International Women's Day. The World Council of Churches is a fellowship, has a shared commitment to be a community of women and men rested equally in the image of God, and we seek for the benefit of all a just fellowship of women and men. So there you have it. The World Council of Churches, they've taken a stand, and we hope that churches and the communities of faith all over the world will see how we can be at the forefront, facilitating gender equality. Dorah Siabonga, thank you so much, and rest well, and you guys have a great time tomorrow, and we're looking forward to reading on social media about all that you have worked on. Thank you so much. I appreciate your friendship and your partnership, and most of all your leadership in everything that you do for our women and for climate justice in South Africa. Take care. God bless.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Pastor Sauls. I appreciate it.
All right. Okay. That was
Wonderful.
Just a powerful, for us to, to just check in on what's happening, another continent, another country, another community, around that. But for us in the United States, of course, Dallas, I always work hard not to compare, but to really try and see how we can connect, what's happening with, women, around the world. Give us, just based on what you've heard there, what what are some of the critical issues that, this day can invite us into around reflecting on and trying to see how we can just move the needle on it, towards, equality, and racial justice.
Thank you to the technology, the platforms that we have now to even be able to have this discussion is already helping us to advance causes. But it just takes me back to a Digital Underground and Tupac song, All Around the World, same song.
All right.
You hear all around the world the stories of women and Black women and darker humans, when humans, the people of a darker hue, having these same stories of violence impacted upon them, impressed upon them, and just many closed doors and closed off to opportunities. And I think what those women are saying is that Black women are very progressive by nature. And that we have always wanted to do what's right by our environment and our community. We've always been the proponents of progression and equality and equity and co-regency. And I think that is really important. And that's one of the things that I got from just learning about different African history and principles and who we were and how we moved. And I think
that story is the same for a woman in South Africa, a woman in South Central Los Angeles, a woman in Australia. Mm-hmm. We are in Asia. We are all around this world, in South America, Brazil. When you see these stories and issues of how climate is impacting us, mm-hmm. and how there are just moderate systems of government or authoritarian figures that are coming into these different countries, and how it's making this huge global impact, and what that stand looks like, mm-hmm. from various perspectives, mm-hmm. around the world. Mm-hmm. And so yeah, I had a wonderful takeaway from that dialogue, to be able to see that, we have to be, as we're doing the work in our own communities, we have to make sure we're doing the connectivity, because somebody's got a good idea that sparked another good idea that we should be working and trying to implement here. Yeah. And so, yes.
Absolutely. As one of our, leaders, here, and I'm not even going to say young leaders, because sometimes when you say that, folk are like, oh,
I'm 39.
One of our leaders.
I'm not as young as I used to be.
As one of our leaders in this community and in this city and in this county, on this, International Women's Day, who are the women, that has inspired you, that, on whose shoulders, you stand, that you can just, connect with at that intersection, of the work that you are doing?
Oh, so many women come to mind from different various aspects of myself, mm-hmm. from my activist standpoint. And I think about the work that I've tried to do in the Democratic Party. I think about Fannie Lou Hamer,
mm-hmm.
Almost everything I do in terms of fighting and standing up and having a voice in the party, and making sure that Black women have a voice and Black men have a voice in our party, it's because of her, and her experience. And I think that history, being able to point back to that point, to say, hey, we're not going back. We should be going further. I shouldn't have the same experiences that a Fannie Lou Hamer had in our party. And so but I also, think about, from entrepreneurial things, you think about so many women right now who are just killing it, from the Beyoncés to the Rihannas to the Oprahs to just so many wonderful small women, smaller names that people don't know, that aren't necessarily household names, that are just scientists, that are there's a sister in Alabama, I think it's Dr. I'm going to miss her name. I don't want to mess her name up, but she just discovered a whole process of nano, it kills cancer, and that is amazing. So there have so many women that look like me that I can point to that impress me, but there are just women of different cultures around the world that are just speaking up and standing up for justice, and pointing the people who look towards them towards the right direction. And those are the people that I really do appreciate.
We'll get into the Democratic Party in a minute.
Oh no,
what happened with
we don't have to do that.
But a lot of people, of course, learned about this phrase in the mainstream. We are the ones who've been waiting for, because of a speech that President Obama made, and folk don't know that. Sweet Honey and Rock sang a song. We are the ones we've been waiting for. That's one of my favorite groups. But before that, they picked that up when they went to South Africa and spent some time with women there, and heard that phrase from women in South Africa. We are the ones we've been waiting for. Basically, women taking charge, because all the men were incarcerated, were jailed, because of apartheid. And so they were working diligently, for their release. And then, at some point when they had a meeting, it is said, or I've heard the story, told, they were just like, why do we have to wait for the men to be released or to come back, and so the phrase then at that particular meeting was born, was we're not going to wait for them anymore. We are the ones that we've been waiting for, and I thought that's just such a powerful revelation, that can be utilized for everyone, who feel like, who I got to wait for, I have the power to actually, make a difference and do, what I can do. When you hear that phrase, we are the ones we've been waiting for, how does that, move you or can move us, as black folk in general, but especially black women, around what needs to happen right now for such a time as this?
I am just going to call this divine, this just a part of God and what God does and moves, because that is one of the things that was on my mind this morning, about us being the ones we are waiting for. What are we waiting for? Why do we continue to take incremental steps towards incremental change only to be taken back further steps, and I think that ought to be the mantra of definitely the millennial and this new generation Z. You all are really taking charge for yourselves, and you can be proud of that, but just also own up when you could use a little help and some guidance from our seniors who've been here.
We're all in this
They're
together.
sage. We're all in this together. And I think, but in terms of the issues that we really are facing, even economically, still far too many young people, young new families that are people who are ready to start their family are not able to buy a home. They're not able to access the same amount of resources in terms of the steady job and the career paths that other generations have had. And we have to really just stand up and say, you know what, this is what I want to do, and go for it. You have enough to do what you need to do today. You have enough to connect to at least the last bastion of programs that are available. And I think people have to think about that. If you want to start that restaurant, start that restaurant, do that business plan. You got to put the work in. Yeah. But if we do it, we are the ones we've been waiting for. The things that you wanted to look at and see in your community one day. I was driving down Crenshaw yesterday and I looked at some places and I said, wow, you know what? This has really been here like 40 years. I'm about to be 40 next year. This has looked like this for 40 years. And why haven't we changed? Where is that next generation? And it's like, oh, it's me. It's time. Because when I go through other communities, those same things are not there. They've either been revitalized, redeveloped, and so that has to happen. But how does it happen to make sure that I'm still here to reap the benefits? Right. And so that's the work that we have to do. And I think a lot of people have done a great job at saying what we don't want, but now it's time to show what we do want, and that we are serious about getting it.
Yeah, and building that bridge between resistance and reimagination. I think that's a critical bridge that we need to build, so that we do not just exhaust ourselves in resistance, which has its place, but also try and see how we energize ourselves through reimagination, around that. And that's happening, in a lot of our young people, young entrepreneurs, they're doing it. I mean, from Hot and Cool, not too far from here. I mean, this studio that we are in, is owned by a black woman. So we want to lift up Felicia Morris, and shout out for giving us this platform and celebrate the poetess, around that. Just up here is the Metaphor Lounge, that's next door, literally, that I'm a member of, and just a space on Crenshaw for creative minds to gather and come together. So it's happening.
It's happening
all over, and so I mean, I think people just need to come to terms with the fact that you are the one that you've been waiting for. You are significant. You can make a difference. You have the power, and you have all that you need. Now, learn what you have and see how you can leverage it with others. Because if you want to go fast, you go by yourself. But if you want to go far, we got to go together.
We got to go together.
So the key thing is together, in terms of bringing.
How we come together is
well, it's
a process.
And it invites conversation and collaboration. It invites deconstruction of how we may misunderstand each other, and then deconstruction. How do we reinvent each other around that? So that can be very, very I think I look at it as an opportunity in terms of how we do move forward. I want to get to, what's happening. We we had our election on Tuesday, and all of the runoffs that are going on, there's a woman, that's on it, which is great, and we celebrate that. It's just awesome, whether it's supervisorial race or whether it's for us CD10, etc. So clearly, women, continue to take their rightful place, and reclaim that place, for us. We know that women, especially Black women, has made a tremendous difference for how the Democratic Party, continues to move forward. Black people in general, they've basically turned things around for Joe Biden. Give me your sense around where do we go from here?
I'm not one of those Black people.
Where do we go from here in terms of just what can that Black agenda be in general, but particularly what can that Black women agenda be, as we make our way towards, November, especially, as candidates begin to probably, look at, vice presidential candidates, et cetera, et cetera. What role can Black women play?
I think we still have a primary, and I think we still have a very hefty primary that's happening. And so yes, it's great to talk about vice president candidates, but you really need to know who the presidential nominee is going to be for the party.
And what that person's platform is going to be.
And what that platform is and how it impacts you.
Yes.
Whether it's a specific plan for African Americans or what their plan is or what they plan to do. If there's just the status quo versus incremental change versus what people seem to think is revolutionary change, but I think it's just simply doing the right thing by the people who need it the most. And when we really get into where we go in terms of who wins, I think what we have to look is historically. Historically, moderate Democrats have not won the presidency. Mm-hmm. And I think we put a lot of faith in the Southern vote in the primary, and we never win that Southern vote in the general. It's very rare. The last time we won the South big as Democrats was Jimmy Carter in 1976. Now, he was a progressive candidate for that time, right? Barack Obama was a progressive candidate for that time, which is how we could see a stark contrast between him and a John McCain. You could see a stark contrast between the progressive candidate and them. But when we have more moderate Democrats running, we don't win. We haven't been able to do it. We haven't been able to do it with Hillary. Even with 3 million more votes, we still didn't close it out. We weren't able to do it with Al Gore. We weren't able to do it with John Kerry. And with Bill Clinton, he ran to the left of his opponents, and he was able to show a stark contrast between himself and a George Bush. And I think that is what we have to be able to do. If you are so far middle of the road that people can't really see the difference, if you don't really want to take action on climate, meanwhile we have record fires breaking out all over in this country, in California, and into South Americas and to Africa, and we have all these things happening, and the climate is really bad. Why wouldn't we want to take further action? Right. And I just don't think we see that with a Biden. But I think in terms of people's track record is what's important to me. And I know people can say, oh, well, Bernie Sanders marched with Dr. King, but what about now? Well, what about now? Let's look at his track record. Let's look at how long this person has been in this movement for justice and equality versus someone else who had to come along and be dragged along, who didn't support Roe v. Wade, women's reproductive rights, who did not think that we young Black boys and young Black girls should be in the same classroom together. That says more to me about who you are. And I don't want, for my generation, I am saying to all of the superdelegates, all of the electeds, the congressional members, particularly of our state of California where the senator won, this is a republic. You are to represent the populace of your state. And if the populace of your state said, this is our candidate, to go to a Democratic convention where you're supposed to be representing us and overturn that decision, says more about you and what you value in terms of democracy in this country. And so I think it's really important for us to let people make their decisions. You're going to make your decision. You endorse who you want to endorse. That tells us who you are. And we can make more informed decisions after that. But I think for now, it's really important that people really take a look at people's track records. Listen, Joe Biden is not Barack Obama. Okay, these aren't the same person. And so the things that they support and who they are, our generation does not want a Biden deciding the next Supreme Court justice that's going to impact me for the rest of my life. Right. This is not the person we want making that decision. And I think it's really important for the elected officials now to understand that when you're making this decision, the future of this party overwhelmingly wants transformative change. And they have voted for it time and time and again. They told you in 2016. They really told you every single time. But we would have so many more people. Think about it. Jimmy Carter won Mississippi. He won Florida. He won Georgia. He won the South. How did this progressive guy get these states? And that is, I think, what would be surprising about a Bernie Sanders nomination. But we're at where we're at. Some people are just dug their heads in the sand and they're not going to listen and they're going to make their decisions. And I'm not going to love you any differently. But as a people, if you want to look at how we reduce the debt ratio, the wealth gap between white Americans and African Americans, wiping out student debt does that. We're 20-1 with the wealth ratio between African Americans and white. You wipe out student debt, now we're 5-1. You add in some health care. Wait a minute, now we might be cooking because how many people they say they're insured, but you're really underinsured. You're not getting all of the services. You're not able to get that dental like you need. You're not able to get these things. And this is someone that says everyone should have health care, not just the few that we want to take care of, everyone. And that makes a difference because guess what? We're in the movie theaters with you. We're in the parks with you. We are a community at the end of the day. And so the person who has the least conditions is representative of that entire community.
Right.
So.
Yeah. And so as we, march towards November, as a Black woman, what would be, game-changing, aspects that you would want to see in the platform, of a presidential, nominee from the Democratic Party?
Well, I want them to be serious about climate change. One, I want them to really take a serious look at the drilling and the fracturing, the hydraulic fracturing that's happening in low-income communities of color, and predominantly in communities of color. We also need somebody that is serious about criminal justice reform and not taking money from private prisons and not being bundled by the insurance, having their campaign funds being bundled by the big insurance industry as well as big pharma. How do we get serious when people are paying upwards of $1,000 a month for their diabetic medication, insulin and key things for like EpiPens, all of that has to stop. And I think if we don't have people, they're telling you, these candidates are telling you who they are, folks. They are telling you that the things that you really need the most don't matter. So unless you are making over $1 million a year, okay, you have to be voting progressive. This is not for you. And I think even if you are making over $1 million a year, you shouldn't want to live in a society where people who don't seem to be as successful of you monetarily have lesser standards, or just complete third world conditions. Go walk around downtown Los Angeles. It is third world, folks. Okay, nothing is changing about that right away. And that's because we continue to elect the same type of people over and over and over again, and they are not willing to make revolutionary change. And so we need to stop saying that revolutionary word is such a bad word, because listen, Dr. King was a revolutionary, Malcolm X was a revolutionary. I will stand proudly with all of those non-compromising individuals about their faith, their people, and what really matters is our humanity. And so, you've got to take all of those things into consideration when you make those statements. And I hope somebody in Mississippi is watching. I hope somebody in Michigan is watching. I hope somebody in Arizona and Missouri is watching, because we have to make revolutionary change in order to really survive as a country right now in terms of where we're going on this planet.
Absolutely. Yes. Yeah. And you know, that's exactly, you know, the bridging point between what Dora said and what Dallas just said, and that is we need bold and courageous leadership. And that is, you know, the key piece. In South Africa, bold and courageous leadership. We cannot continue, you know, to nurture vestiges of white supremacy. We cannot continue to nurture, you know, strategies that facilitate inequality and that perpetuates racism and sexism and homophobia and all, you know, isms, you know, that contribute, you know, to the destruction, you know, of the planet, you know, around that. So I think that is critical for us, you know, in South Africa, you know, as well as in the United States as we move forward, you know, to really, you know, reimagine, you know, a more just and fair society that serves everyone, works for everyone, because everyone deserves it, period. And so all of creation cries out, you see, for men and women of dignity to step up and step out so that we can truly, you know, live in a world that is reflective of, you know, God's beloved community. And we are grateful that women consistently take the lead to facilitate that. You know, when people talk just about feminism, our black women come along and they talk about womanism. When people, you know, just talk about reproductive rights, black women come along and talk about reproductive justice. Always pushing the needle, you know, towards, you know, a society that reflects, you know, equality and equity. So we want to say thank you to all women, but we want to especially say thank you to black women. We know that your back has been a bridge for us. And our prayer is that as we undergird you and lift you up, you know, that we can truly celebrate the divinity within your humanity that informs your femininity, that then enables us to experience the unique, dynamic, and progressive and prophetic and powerful leadership that you can bring, you know, as we move towards this liberatory work, you know, for all of us on this planet. So thank you so much for joining us. We love you, Ma'ani Sauls. We celebrate, you know, our women, and we continue to work and do what we have to do, you know, in terms of moving towards a more just and fair society. This has been Faith Without Borders, and as always, glad to be your host, Pastor Calvin Sauls. Take care. We'll see you next time.